guys, it's me again, Erica from A Needle and Thread. I'm back with installment number 5 of our 2022 Block of the Month series. Today's block is comprised of 3 different units that we're going to put together, and I'm going to break it down so it's super duper easy. This is what our block's going to look like, so let's get to it. So the first thing we're going to do is work on this pink block here, which is called a square within a square, because you have a square of color and then you have the outer square being formed by the white triangles on the corner. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my color piece. It's got 6.5 inches. I'm going to take my white squares, which are going to make my corner squares. I've already done a little prep work by drawing a diagonal through the middle of the square. That's going to be placed on the corner of the block. I'm going to pin on either side at the same time to make things go a little bit faster. This is considered the flip and fold method, where you stitch directly on the line, flip off the excess, and fold it out. All 4 of my color squares first, and then we'll sew them together quick and easy. I went through all of my color squares and I placed the white square on opposing corners. Make sure that your diagonal goes from the center of the top to the center of the side. You don't want your diagonal going to the center of your block. You want it to go from top edge to outer edge. I went ahead and pinned, and now I'm going to stitch directly on the blue line because this is a stitch and flip method. So let me get that done with all 4 of my green blocks. So if you notice, I did some chain stitching. It's just a little bit more efficient. We talked about it in previous videos. It's efficient, saves thread, makes life a lot nicer. So I have 2 of my corners put on, so my next step is going to be to cut off at 1/4 of an inch the excess triangle from the corner. And all of your squares are going to look like this. This is the first step. You can use scissors to clip, you can use your rotary cutter to trim off of these corners. Just remember, you want to keep your seam allowance that's left at about 1/4 of an inch. It does not have to be an exact 1/4 of an inch because nobody's measuring on the inside right there. So I have all 4 of my green squares with the white triangles. So now I'm going to press them out. So to do your pressing, you're going to apply heat with the white flaps overlapping in the middle. And then I'm just going to use the edge of my iron to gently press the white fabric out. My wool pressing mat is a lot of help here because it keeps these seams nice and flat. So I flipped all of my white triangles out to the outside edge. Now I'm going to do the exact same thing on the other side. The instructions for this block are going to have you make 2 of this block for the overall quilt. I'm only doing 1 today, so it's going to go a lot faster, but the cutting instructions do call for you to make 2. Here I have all 4 of my square within a square blocks created. Now, something that I want you guys to be aware of, and I get this question all the time with quilters who are just starting out, when you do the stitch and flip method like this, you want to have your white fabric 1/4 of an inch beyond where your point is. So the point of the green hits short. This is going to be the seam allowance where you're going to be stitching next to put these 2, or to put 2 blocks together. You want the green points to just touch, to just kiss right there at the seam. If you don't have 1/4 of an inch extra of your white fabric, then your green point is going to fall into your seam, and you really don't want that. So the next thing, I'm going to set these aside, my square within a square, and start with my half square triangle blocks. So in order for us to make this hourglass block, this blue and white, you can think about it as an hourglass, or you can think about it in terms of what it actually is, which is a 1/4 square triangle block. The rest of the time that we've been doing these blocks, we've been making half square triangle blocks, which means that you have a square, it's cut on the diagonal in half, and you have 1 fabric on the bottom and 1 fabric on the top. So when we get to this one, we're talking about a 1/4 square triangle. This blue unit, blue and white unit, is cut into 4 pieces, 2 whites, 2 blues. And so each one of those triangles is 1/4 of the square. The way we're going to do it is by first making a half square triangle block, which is what we're all familiar with doing. I have 2 blue squares, and I'm going to match them up with 2 of the same size white square. Now notice again, I did some prep work and I drew my diagonal going through my white square. So I'm gonna lay it faces together, match it up, pin it, but this time, remember with the stitch and flip method, I had stitched directly on the line. But when you're making half square triangle blocks, 2 at a time, half square triangle blocks, you don't stitch directly on the line. You stitch a 1/4 inch on either side of the line. So we have to make sure that that is done this time. And the other thing I want you to make sure that you're doing, especially when you're working with these half square triangle blocks, is to sew a scant 1/4 inch. So instead of using a full 1/4 inch from your line, you're gonna come in just a little bit closer to your line to make it a scant 1/4 inch. It's gonna make all the difference in the world. So I did chain sewing on both of these, got them knocked out pretty quickly. You can see that I stitched a scant 1/4 inch from my center line. Now I'm going to cut directly on the center line to separate these 2 triangles from each other. So once they're here, I'm now going to press them open with the seam allowance going toward my blue fabric. In order to make your 1/4 square triangle blocks now, we're going to take 2 of the half square triangle blocks and we're going to put them together like this so that we have white touching blue and white touching blue. If we look at it on the table, I'll have one color up top, and so I'll lay the next one with the white covering the blue and the blue covering the white. Remember, I pressed my seams toward the blue. What that allows is for my seams to nest. When I lay them on top of each other like this, means that the top piece has the seam allowance going over this way, and the bottom piece has a seam allowance going that way. That's going to allow my seams to just kind of snug up right next to each other and nest. So I'm going to pin, and then I'm going to draw another diagonal going from corner to corner. Now I'm going to take one of my heat erasable pens, so I'm going to draw a diagonal going opposite to the one that I just previously sewed. And with this, I'll go ahead and pin. Again, it's going to be a scant 1/4 inch off of the line that I drew. Let me trim this apart, and then I'm going to cut down that second diagonal that I drew and 1/4 square triangle block. Magic. But now that we have them made, then you need to go ahead and take out a ruler that's going to allow you to trim up to 6.5 inches. When you're using a 6.5 inch ruler, any square ruler, you're going to have a diagonal line on the ruler that helps you to line up the diagonal on your block. The second thing you want to look for is the halfway point in the total size of your block. If it's 6.5 inches, then your halfway point is going to be 3.25. Right in the middle of your hourglass block here, then you know that your block is straight. You don't want to squish over and up to only cut off the bottom. You want to trim off 4 sides equally. So now I'm going to share something with you. I've laid out this block, the square within a square, 1/4 square triangles, and the solid square in the middle. The pattern in the quilt has us laying it out differently. It has hourglass block laying sideways, so the blue is on either side. On mine here, I put it so that the blue triangles are touching the center square. You choose the layout that you want. Do you want it to look like this, or do you want it like this? So what I'm gonna do is gonna work boom, 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 get that row together, the center row together, the bottom row together. I'm going to press my seams in opposing directions, and then I'm going to sew the 3 rows together to get my finished block. I do want to pin, guys. Pinning is the right way to go here. You saw me stitch earlier to get the individual blocks together to form the row. I didn't pin because all of my blocks were the same size, and I'm able to control, it's a small enough block, I'm able to control the top, the middle, and the end without any pins. But this time I do want to make sure I pin because my seams need to nest with each other, okay? So I'm going to pin on either side of each one of my seams, double checking to make sure they are nesting nicely, and they feel like they are. You'll know that it's nesting when you don't feel any extra bulk at that seam. They just kind of lie next to each other and fit. I always pin on either side of my seams when I nest, and I generally pin on either end also. I took my pins out and you can see that these seams are laying flat in the direction they were originally pressed, and these ones as well are laid flat in the direction they were originally pressed. Now I'm going to go ahead and attach the top row, and then we're done. There we go. Now I'm going to do the last step, which is going to be to press these long vertical seams open, and we're going to be done. All right, guys, I think this is it. We have our 5th block in our block of the month quilt. So I hope that this tutorial helped you. If you have any questions, if you have any comments, please drop them down below. Make sure that you subscribe, you tell your friends to subscribe. If you want to continue watching this series, the video is going to be right here on the screen, so you can click that and go to the next one. I hope you had fun, and come back for the next one. Bye.